So, hi there. Welcome to lesson one. We will be talking about understanding skips and the summarize command. And sometimes people don't understand why there is skip in the logic or why we have what we call missings. I try to keep the terminologies as simple as possible. So, why do we have missing sometimes in data? And why should we be worried or not worried when we see them? So, I will start with a woman named Angela, and she has a husband who is 43 years old. Her daughter is 4 years old, and her mother is 80-year old. And for some reason, some questions was administered to every member of her household. So let's look at the question that were administered to her in the questionnaire. So let's look at this. So they were asked what their names were. So what is your name? We had Angela, John, Joyce, and Grace. We were also asked what was their gender. So Angela was female, according to what she filled in her form. John is male, Joyce is female, and Grace, Angela's mom, is female. So now these are basic questions. But now, if they asked, have you ever been pregnant? That question will be yes for Angela and Grace. Angela is having a baby currently. She's pregnant with a baby. So she has been pregnant. And of course, she had Joy, or Joyce rather. Joyce is there. But John biologically cannot be pregnant. And Joyce biologically, even though she's female, she cannot be pregnant. But Grace has been pregnant before. And the only reason why we know that is possible is because Grace gave birth to Angela. So Grace must have been pregnant with Angela at some time in her life. And that's why we have yes, yes, but not available or not applicable. Now, if we ask, are you currently pregnant now? For Angela, the answer will be yes, because she's currently carrying a baby in her tummy. Uh, John is still not applicable. That question does not pertain to him. He has never been pregnant, so he cannot be currently pregnant. And because of his male species, he cannot be pregnant. The same thing with Joyce, who is a 4 year old. She has never been pregnant. She cannot be currently pregnant due to her biology. Uh, Grace is not currently pregnant, but she used to be pregnant because when she had Angela, she was pregnant. So you get that point. So that is a no. Now, how old is the pregnancy in months? That question is not applicable to Grace because she's not currently pregnant. That question is for those who are currently pregnant. And in the same light, John and Joyce, we've already talked about them a lot. So you can see not applicable from questions 3 to 5 apply to John, but only for question 5 that it applies to Grace. And Angela has answered all the questions because of her condition. So basically, that's how it looks like in in a questionnaire. Let's use that word. You know, so Angela was the name. And now we're trying to return it back to entities and attributes. So the entities are in the rows and the attributes are in the columns. So Angela, John, Joyce, Grace, and you can see the questions there all asked. So technically speaking, these questions of whether you had been pregnant or not, assuming they were in text, they will be skipped. So let me go back one more step. They were not available, not available, not applicable, not applicable. They will be blank in the data set. And the reason is because those for those attributes, they were not applicable to those entities. And I'm sure you understand this now. If you have watched Module 1, we don't have a problem. But if you're just watching any randomly, you may not understand what we said. And that's why I keep emphasizing, please, let's follow the sequence. But some people will just want to be able to understand one concept or the other, and that's fine. So that's it basically about it. Then, because we're using numbers, they come as dots for question number 5. So that's how we get to understand these things. So if we see in our data, we're now talking about consistency, that John is 6 months pregnant, it becomes illogical because he did not even say he was pregnant. He's not currently pregnant, and therefore he can't even be 6 months pregnant. The same thing with Grace, who is 80 year old. Biologically, at that age, she can rarely conceive or have children. So these are the inconsistencies you will see based on the ability of understanding the context. Now, if you don't understand the context of data, you may not be able to understand consistency, and that is critical. So the focus should be looking at those kind of inconsistencies like this 6 and 8 that we have found here. John cannot be 6 months pregnant and Grace cannot be 8 months pregnant. So that's basically how it works. So the summarize command is very interesting. I know we used it for uh, um, some information like clarity, but because it has a variety of unit varied summary statistics, we can check also the number of observations. It greatly helps us, and we can see the missings, those that are missing. So that means if you went back to that table that we just had here, we can count the number of missings. For example, the number of missings for question 5 should be 3, and the number of non-missing should be 1. Only Angela is also feel that thing. So when you summarize question 5, what you should find is one occurrence out of 4. And that's how it works. So basically, that's it with summarize command. And this is summarize syntax, which we have used before. So we'll not go so much into detail with that. All we'll do is now apply it and see that not for every variable, they have the number of um, observations you are expecting based on, you know, the rows and the columns. So we will take a data set that has a couple of missings, and hopefully you'll be able to get what we are saying. So see you in the practical session where we will talk about this in detail. So hi there, welcome to another session where we look at the women data, the NLSW 88. If you have installed Stata on your laptop or your computer, this comes by default. All you need is just to type this command exactly the way I typed it, and you'll be able to see this data set. So we want to look at the power of summarize again, and in a closer light. So it's just going to be a very short video, but how it helps us identify skips, and we'll make a judgment since something is not logical here. Remember, now we have come to the area in the module that talks about logical consistency. So we need to check some stuff right now. Okay, so not wasting much time, let's just type the syntax use, type the name of the file, comma clear, and browse. Okay, and we can now look at the variables. Now, the one that is interesting, is that we have 17 variables here, 2,246 variables. So let's use the summarize command quickly just to summarize the 17. They're not much. So I'll use the summarize command here. Now, bear in mind that I can type it right in the command window. So I'll just minimize this a bit so that summarize, we spell the American way. It's an American company anyway, so don't be jealous. I will now run. Sorry, I use the zoom, browse, so that's why it's covered. So the summarize command is here. Now let's look at these observations. 2,246. We use this for completeness. So one way of checking logical consistencies, checking how complete data is for some variables. We had used certain parameters. For example, the girl is very young. Her daughter, I'm trying to remember her name now, in the presentation I just made. So she cannot give birth at that time. So you don't expect any input from that variable on pregnancy if she has ever been pregnant or if she's currently pregnant. So if we scroll down here, let's just scroll down here. We now see a few missings. We talked about missing or skips. In industry, we have 2232. 2232. Yeah, correct. 2,232. We know that everybody is supposed to be 2,246. So the industry falls short of that, occupation falls short of that, union falls short of that, and even tenure. Now, we've told you that those variables, industry, or occupation and union, they must be, and you can click here to find out, they must be numbers, but apparently categorical variables. So they are all blues. In fact, this particular data set has quite a number of blue colored variables. So let's take a look here, just like that. You know, let's take a look, and we can browse. There are many things we can do, anyways. So we can now find out, now that this is not complete, it's not up to 2000, we are falling short by some figures. So we can now have browse if industry, sorry, I could drag it here, industry double equals to dot. I mentioned that before in the presentation. They are represented by a dot. So we're looking for these missings. Why is it that of all these women, these were missing? So and investigate it. So industry is dash. And that's a concern because we had college graduates there, you know, we don't know why others will have industry and this one will be missing. So we can flag this out immediately that these particular names do not have industries and they should. There's nothing that talks about them not having um, industry. So that's very, very, very important. So that's one way we can check these things. So we also find that in occupation, as we had seen in the summary, occupation now is also not there. So even if they were not working, there was other here, there must be a way. If you look at union too, we have a couple of missings. So we can also go back directly and just say union because the number of missings for union will be different from the number of missings for industry. So let me just take that out of the way. So let's browse if union is missing. So quite a number of unions are missing, and you can see it here again. 368 of them are missing. So you ask yourself why, and they cut across all kinds of occupation. It's either you are union or non-union. That's how it is. So there's apparently something wrong with the data. So we now need to get back to the person who gave us the data, the owners of the data, and say, we find this disturbing trend. We find people who have occupations and do not, they are not non-union or union. You have to just be one. You can't be none, especially when you are working. So if you are working, do you belong to a union? If the answer is no, then you are non-union. Do you belong to a union? And the answer is yes, then you are union. That's it. So we need to understand why it's missing here. And I think for tenure too, we had that. So we want to find out all the tenures that are missing. If you just go back here, you find out that tenure is not also adding up. So I could go back and type in tenure just to find out if there's a pattern and if there's a logical reason for that. So there is nothing here that tells us why they should not be written. So maybe some variable is missing that will give us this missing clue. So we have a couple of variables like that show us a skip has happened, but that's not explained why. So this definitely has some logical inconsistencies until proven otherwise. And one of the ways is there's a variable that says, oh, this guy has served full time, therefore he cannot have a tenure, or even the union one is quite difficult to create an excuse for them. So that's how it is basically. And I hope you understand now that when you find some missings, giving context, I'll keep using that word, context that you have been given, it should be able to tell you whether something is wrong or not. So age, for example, should not be missing. Is either maybe the person has dementia, doesn't remember his age, or maybe he was born in the time when people were not tracking age. I'm trying to look for excuses, so you can't put your age. So Educational status is either none or you have some. So when you are missing educational status too, I'm worried. So that's how you look at data for logical consistency and finding out why they are skipped. Because apparently these particular observations for those particular variables were skipped. So I hope this makes sense. And we have to keep looking out for things like this in our work. Um, when we will have a couple of more intense tasks as we move on, and you're going to see that very shortly, we're now going to be very advanced where we'll be taking everything we learned in module 1, module 2, module 3, module 4, and applying it to a particular task. So it also helps you not to forget all the other things you have learned in the previous modules. So I hope this has helped. This is how we check for skips or missings within data, using the summarize command. We've also mentioned already too that if we have missings for string variables, summarize may not be able to detect that, and you still use the same syntax: browse if missing. You know, so that's how it runs and it works. So we'll have more practice work as we move towards the end. There'll be more intense practice going on, and hopefully we'll be able to allow this particular concept sink in. So bye for now. I'll see you in the next video.